Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has been very clear that passing voting rights legislation is a priority for Democrats. And President Joe Biden reinforced that yesterday with a speech in Georgia. He gave full support for the legislation and reprimanded state lawmakers, saying Republican-supported election integrity laws were Jim Crow 2.0. And join me now to discuss this is Hans von Spakovsky, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Hans, welcome back. Always great to see you. Well, the president's speech didn't sit too well with many people. In fact, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell called out the president today for stoking division. I want to get your thoughts on that. And what did you think of the speech?
Well, the speech was entirely based on a false premise, the idea that election reform efforts are suppressing votes. We know that's not true. Voter ID laws, for example, which Joe Biden and others claim is Jim Crow 2.0, that's not Jim Crow. In fact, a vast majority of black voters support ID, as do all voters. They think it's a common sense requirement. So the idea that votes are being suppressed, it's just not true. The census report on the 2020 election showed we had the highest turnout in a presidential election in this century. So that's just more evidence that that Biden and Kamala Harris are making false claims.
Hans, for those that are maybe still confused about all these bills, can you break those down for us and what these bills hope to achieve, and how likely is it, do you think, they'll pass?
There are two big election bills and then a third one. The two ones that folks have been talking about is S1, the For the People Act, and another bill that was put forward by Senator Klobuchar called the Freedom to Vote Act. Those two bills would basically federalize and micromanage the administration of elections, something that's always been done by the states. They would gut all state voter ID laws. They would restrict the ability of states to check the accuracy of their voter registration rolls. I mean, it's just a whole series of really bad changes that would get rid of the safety protocol states have put in. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, that's the third bill that Joe Biden praised it yesterday. That also is a bad bill because what it would do is give unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats at the Justice Department the ability to essentially veto almost all state law changes affecting elections made by state legislatures or by voters in referenda. It's a very anti-democratic bill.
And Hans, do you think that these will actually get passed?
If Joe Manchin and others, such as Kristen Sinema, continue to say they're going to support the filibuster rule, no, they won't pass. By the way, one of the ironies of the speech that Biden gave is that he's saying we need all these changes to the Voting Rights Act, like the John Lewis bill. That law was passed in order to protect the rights of minorities, the voting rights of minorities in this country, and yet they want to get rid of the filibuster rule, which does the same thing in the U.S. Senate, and basically make the Senate subject to what I would have to call mob rule.
Yeah, I want to turn now to the midterm elections. As we know, the 2020 election was really plagued with pandemic-related difficulties. Do you think we will see those same challenges in the midterms in 2022?
I don't think so. People are getting out again. There's no reason, given the kind of safety protocols that states have put in place, grocery stores and other businesses have put in place. There's no reason for people to not be able to vote in person in their polling places. There's no reason to extend the rules that were put in place to handle COVID. And I'm hoping that that's, in fact, what state election officials do across the country.
And Hans, before I let you go, any final thoughts, and what else are you following?
Well, like I said, Biden and Kamala Harris and others, Chuck Schumer too, they are exaggerating and making outrageous claims of what's happening in state election reform efforts, which are good efforts to try to protect voters in order to support pushing these election bills in Congress and in the Senate that would frankly guarantee dishonest and unfair elections in the future. That is a real problem, and it's one that people should not get in line with.
Well, Hans, thank you so much for coming on. Always appreciate your analysis.
Thanks for having me.